if you think about the cup of tea that you're sipping and everything that went into creating whatever's in this little tea bag, which are, for me, it's like cinnamon, and I have this like rooibos chai tea that I'm sipping. So a farmer, right, cultivated some aspects of that. Somebody else made that little tea bag that wraps all those magical fragrant herbs up. And you just keep pulling back, and it's like the sun, the rain, the trees, right? As I sip that, I am taking in all of those things: the farmer, the sun, the tree that became the paper. All of those things are interwoven into that cup of tea that I am sipping right now, all that brought it to my kettle to pour the water, all those things. So interdependence is that. And unless we are practicing on purpose and paying attention, we really do forget.
One of the things yoga has taught me too is, and I know you feel this too, is like one of the fears is like, oh, I have to hold it alone. And that's going back to that interdependence, is learning how to let the earth and, like you're saying, the sun and these cosmos hold this thing with me, has been such the healing journey of yoga, meditation.
When we pull way back and we go, whoa, we're all connected. It's all connected. That can sometimes make our heads feel like it wants to explode, because it's like, it's so big and it makes
Existential,
us,
yeah.
it can make us feel really small. And there's something really important about pulling way back like that to get perspective on some of the ways in which we might get caught up in drama.
Hi, welcome to Heartmind with Holly. I am so glad you're here. I'm Holly Sin, and I love doing these interviews because I get to have amazing conversations and bring them to you. This conversation's about interdependence and how yoga and Buddhism sees interdependence and the need for it today in our lives, in our world. I'm interviewing my dear friend, colleague, and someone that we together went through a 200-hour training at Dharma Yoga in Austin, Texas. This is Erinn Arizcorreta, and I'm so pleased to bring her to my Heartmind fans. If you're new to Heartmind with Holly, please subscribe, and welcome to Erica.
Well, I think where I would like to start, if you're good with it, is
Yes,
actually
absolutely.
where we met. And then I definitely want to hear about how you started and stuff, but just to kind of go back and ground ourselves there, from
Great.
like, we met in Dharma Yoga school and you went through a 200-hour with me, but you had already done a 200-hour. You were teaching there.
Yeah, I've been teaching since 2001. This will be my 25th year, I guess, of teaching. And yes, I remember practicing at Dharma. I had just moved, I think, to Austin maybe a few years before that. And I was really seeking community, as we all seek community, and feeling like we're a part of something. And this was an important sort of season of my life, as my kids were, they're very little, but they were past
Oh,
that point of needing me all the time. And so, yeah, they were tiny. And it's a pretty intense season of life as you are like immersed in it. And yet right now, what I found is this was about the time that I started to really long for community again in a different way, and to
mm.
have it be about my own path, my own care, my own um, just nurturing, so that I could be home and more available to these little beautiful beings that we're ushering into the world in some way, and being reflections of and models for how to be. And it was a challenging season for me. When we met, I was in my last year of a marriage, of my marriage with the girl's dad. And so there was a lot of changes kind of on the horizon in that period of time.
I'm so glad we're talking, because I feel
Yeah.
like I am in such a similar place, in that my business here is kind of slowing down, but I'm going more global, but things feel like they're just kind of falling apart a little bit. And I think that's
I'm,
what you are going through, looking back at it and knowing kind of where you were, like you said, with your marriage, but you had that
yeah. And we
feeling
can replace marriage
with,
with
yeah.
anything that is a change in somebody's life. So even if anyone listening, or you can't relate to that specific thing, there's that unsettled feeling or that restlessness that's so human when things don't feel solid or steady or how you imagined. And so there's this kind of rub against, here's how I imagined my life, and then here's how it is. And this is where our practice comes in so beautifully and potently. And yet often we still fight against it.
Yeah.
I had also in that year gotten into recovery. So so there was a lot kind of converging in that period of time where it was a lot of personal unfolding and work I needed to do on my own heart and mind and my own relationship with addiction, and how that was going to impact not only my own life, but my children's lives. And I grew up in a family where there was addiction and a lot of history of addiction. And I just knew that I didn't want to repeat that, what we might call that kind of karmic unfolding. I wanted to clear that pattern. And so that actually was the first thing that laid the foundation for this big change in my life. Is I realized through recovery, oh, I actually want different things in my life. I really want to live in a different way than I had been living for so many years. And that required having just a really honest conversation around specifically my marriage. And, if we want to just kind of dive right in, I watched my mother stay with my dad and watched their dynamic with his addiction. And it was very painful as a young person, as a child, to witness, your parents not live in their truth and stay, even though the truth was probably they would have been better off, like finding their way in the world and making a hard decision. And so a lot of that played into, once I had some time in a clear minded space, where I realized that the most loving thing I could do was be in the truth, even though it was so uncomfortable and so scary to jump out and off into the unknown, because what I had, even though it didn't feel like it was my truth, it was predictable. I could count on it. There was security and a feeling of like safety in that sort of, this is what we do, this is our life, here we are, and we're just going to kind of carry on. And I had a lot of kind of funny social anxiety around separating. I had some beliefs around being a yoga practitioner and divorcing. I mean, these are all kind of, when I look back on them, I have a lot of compassion for my younger self. And yet it was a lot of like internal, I had to really sift through a lot of internal stuff until I realized, like, it's okay, I'm human. Like, primary is I'm a human being and I'm imperfect and I'm in process and I'm uncovering and discovering and learning how to be in this body and learning how to be in this mind and this heart and navigating relationships. And so it's okay to be messy. It's okay to be imperfect. And I don't have to make other people comfortable in order for, I don't have to suppress or deny my own needs in order to make other people comfortable, otherwise known as maybe family or certain friends who were, had their own opinions about things.
And that's like the nut of like yoga, right? Is trying to create that interdependence where you don't have to depend on their opinions, but you do love them, and that's like the heart of what we work on. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There was like many, and my mother is no longer, she passed away. She died in 2020 from breast cancer. And
my condolences.
But the conversations that we had in that early time when the girls were really tiny and I was planning to leave and figure it out and go into the unknown with not a lot of kind of security, if you will. And, she was like very against it. She was like, caught up in her own stuff. And to be able to say to her, I love you, you can have your feelings, you can be, you're welcome to be so upset about this. And it's not going to change this choice that I'm making because I can see the bigger picture of being in the truth. And so if we want to bring it back to interdependence, just because the relationship changes with, say, my ex-husband or, my family, it doesn't mean that that's a negative thing, right? It doesn't mean that something bad has to come from that. In fact, so much healing and maturing occurs when we meet things that we aren't anticipating having to choose. I don't think anybody gets married or makes big decisions that feel beautiful in the moment with the plan that it's going to all go to hell or change down the road.
That was all happening kind of right after or during our training. And then not too long after, I feel like you started Sukha.
I was actually still teaching at Dharma, and we were finishing a teacher training. I remember it was like the end of February. It was about this time 11 years ago. And we were opening up March 1st of 2015. And I remember teaching Friday night teacher training and then making my way down to Sukha, and Mark had, set the whole space up, and I got to walk in and just like breathe in this beautiful physical form of taking a big leap and a big risk in a lot of ways.
And you and Mark, did y'all start out as business partners or start out as?
No. So this is the fun part. So we met at Dharma. And so we had a mutual friend, and he was looking to do teacher training. And our mutual friend said, "Oh, you need to meet Erinn. You should train with her." And so he came in and took a class, and it was like immediate. Even before class started, there was this, it was like electric. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like visceral energy. And we immediately connected like that day. We went to lunch, and we were together from that day forward. It was kind of wild, actually, and very unexpected. It was honestly, Holly, the last thing I was looking for was to be in a partnership, because really I was looking forward to having some time to myself and taking some space to, be a single woman for a while. And yet the moment he walked in, I was like, okay, there's something here. We might as well just like lean in and see what's here. And Mark was the big catalyst for encouraging me to open up Sukha. He was like, you need to do this. And it had been something that I had always wanted to do, but there's so many moving parts to opening a business. And to have someone encouraging you really can be the big differentiator between taking an action and continuing to dream about it. And so many times his encouragement is what kept me going. Okay. And then within a year, we had opened Sukha.
Yeah. And does it still have, it sounds like it does, like you're still really deeply rooted in the kind of merging of Buddhism with the yoga?
Yeah, 100%. What brought me to my own personal like studentship and practicing Buddhism was my divorce, was a separation. It was a huge catalyst. I needed more than just the physical aspects of the practice. I needed an anchor. And that's when I found my teacher, Pema. That's when I discovered her teachings and instantly resonated with the way that she approached the practice, the way that she distilled the teachings in a way that felt like I could see and feel myself. I could relate to these wisdom teachings that often get kind of taught in a way that might feel intimidating or kind of far away or just not as accessible or not as relatable. Even some of the other incredible teachers of our times, Pema was the one that I resonated most with. And I
And
think
this is
partly
Pema Chödrön,
Pema
right?
Chödrön. Yeah, Pema Chödrön. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I was just talking
And
about her book, When Things Fall Apart,
oh my
because
gosh.
that's where I'm
Yeah.
at. I feel like a little bit.
Read that book and
I
highlight
do. I
it and
do.
underline it and carry it around with you. I had her Comfortable with Uncertainty in my bag, and I would just that book particularly because it's like 1 to 2 page chapters, which is great for distracted minds of the times. So if you want to get these like bite size, packed full of potency teachings, that was the one I had in my bag, and I could just open it up to any page and there would be medicine for me. There would be whatever it was that was going on in that moment, whether it was, recovery stuff or relational things. There was always a heart message that I could land in. And gratefully, I was able to, or I have been able to study with her in person many times now over the last many years. And I just continue to come back to her humanity, her relatability, and the way that she can take, again, these kind of rich teachings and bring them really down to earth. And that's what I aspire to be as a teacher, is someone who can take these teachings that can feel really big or really, I don't know if it's far away, but can feel like, gosh, how can I attain these states, or how can I cultivate this kind of depth in my commitment to my practice when there's just so much going on in the world, or there's so much going on in my everyday life. And I really appreciate the way that she has been able to teach to the spirit of the seasons of life that many of us walk through. And she lived it. And I think there's something so precious about a teacher who has lived like the lay person's life, the paying bills, the raising of children, the walking through divorce, all of those things that are so relatable. You can just touch a moment in her life and go, oh God, I get that, and she's very reverent and very lighthearted when it comes to showing her own struggles and her own imperfections. And I find that to be so refreshing, that she doesn't try to hide, like, her neuroses, that she's just as caught up as any of us. And I think that is really at the heart of remembering why we practice, is not to become some excellent meditator on our cushions or on our yoga mats, but how we can use our everyday ordinary struggles, our everyday ordinary blessings as a way to connect to others and to not feel so alone in a world that often feels very alone, very isolating. And we suffer or we struggle oftentimes in silence, or we hide away the parts of us that hurt or that are in pain in some way, for many reasons. I mean, of course, socially, it's hard just to wear your heart on your sleeve and share the truth of the day if the truth of the day is unpleasant or uncomfortable. And yet, this practice of self-compassion and touching in on our own pain and our own suffering is really, it's the jewel, right? It's the Om Mani Padme Hum of it all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so amazing that I've never been in her presence, that you're able to experience her in person and have that experience in direct teaching.
I have a really sweet story that I tell. I lead an annual meditation training that we've been doing. I guess this will be the 9th year, I believe. And I don't remember what year it was, but it was a few years back. I think it was, maybe 2019. And I went to see Pema in Colorado, and I'm like a giddy, like literally like a teenager at, your favorite pop concert kind of feeling, where you're just like the butterflies and the just anticipation of sitting in her wisdom and in her magic. And so I went up to Colorado. It was this like hot August summer up in the mountains. And I remember arriving a little late to the morning practice, kind of tiptoeing in and finding my seat and feeling that familiar, like, oh my goodness, they were chanting, and they were chanting mantras that I hadn't chanted before. So that insecure part of myself came kind of like roaring back. And then later in the day, it was Pema's time to talk, and she shared her teachings, and then her teacher was going to be next. And I was sitting in the front row, and a few minutes later, Pema came out to take her seat as a student, and she sat just like right next to me, like at a little angle. And I remember just being like, all right, play it cool. Just keep breathing, relax here. All is good. But I just remember her writing notes in her journal and her sitting there just like I was sitting with her as a student. And she was sitting with her teacher. And it just reminded me, like, here we all are. We're all here having this human experience. And if we stay open, there's always an opportunity to learn and to be in the spirit of studentship. But my favorite part of the day is at the end when she was leaving and she was walking down this little path, and I was going to drive back into Denver and fly home. And I wanted to say thank you to her and goodbye. And so I made my way to this little circle that was heading down this path, and she linked arms with me and we walked, and I just walked in silence while she was chatting with the group that she was with. And we made it to the bottom of this hill, and I said, well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to see you again. And she turned and she kissed me right on the mouth, like right on the lips, like a grandmother, like this sweet little grandmother kiss right on my mouth. I remember like walking away and looking around, and this other person who had been watching just like came down and was like, I saw that. And I was like, did you see that? Was that real? Did that just happen? And so I had this little moment of just surreal kind of bliss around having a connection, just however brief, with that sweetness of a grandmother. And I'm driving home, and this is where the contrast of life is just, the divine comedy of it all. The first thing I wanted to do was call Mark and be like, guess what? Pema kissed me. And I get on the phone with Mark, and he starts singing like some childish song, like, oh, Pema, you and Pema, huh? And I just thought, you know what? So I hung up the phone as if I had lost connection to him, right? Because what I love about Mark is that he's like the mirror. He holds the mirror of opposites. He holds the mirror of, like, it's not just like this, it's also like that kind of thing. And to not get so caught up in my little bubble, because sometimes I want to get caught up in the magic of it all. And he will often bring me right on back down to earth.
Yeah.
So holding that moment of wow, and then Mark reminding me, right. And so Mark has that great sense of humor and helps me stay more grounded in that way. Because, that was really special, but also it was just a moment in time, right?
Yeah. But you also wanted to keep it so that
that's it. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to say we had bad reception going down that mountainside. I don't know, Mark, I can't hear you. What was that?
Yeah. What do you feel like because I think Buddhism is kind of a holder of this term interdependence. What do you feel like with merging the Buddhist teachings with yoga, what it's taught you, hearing a little more now of your journey, whether it's that time or, some more recent time, what has it taught you about this term? What does it even mean? How would you describe it to someone that's like, what does that mean?
We can go macro, we can go micro, right? We can go right here, right now, this moment, and how all these choices that we make bring us to this moment that we're having right now, right? The unfolding of what we might call like karma, and that no thing is truly independent of any other thing. And so interdependence, when it comes to relationships, I think about, parenting. I think about being a teacher or being a student or being a business owner and all these different roles that I have, and that we are all interdependent on each other. And that's actually a very precious and beautiful thing that I think, had I not made the choice to move to Austin, what my life might be like and how different it may be. Or we could even pull further back to kind of connect the dots around the interdependence of it all, is if I'd never unrolled a yoga mat. I found a flyer randomly for a yoga studio however many years ago and decided to see what it was all about. And had I not said yes to that, how my life would have unfolded in a very different way. But the choices that I make, my thoughts, my actions, the way that I speak to myself, all of these things have a ripple effect on how I'm in relationship with others, my children, my students. That to be interdependent really looks like the thoughts that I have, the way that I speak to myself is not separate from how I show up in conversation with you. Right? I can't have this split experience. And I think that's what addiction does. Addiction fractures us and separates us from relationship, and relationship with ourselves and relationship with others. And so interdependence means that at any given moment, how I choose to utilize my energy, my resources, has an impact on not just the immediate moment, but then all those other moments that happen after. It's like unrolling the path, right? Whether it be that like kind of red carpet image of your mind where, moment by moment, I am unfolding my future. I am unfolding that karma. And if I reflect on my history, all the choices that I've made, the beautiful moments, the blessings, the choices I've made, or things that have occurred that have been painful, things that I might regret through my actions or non-action, those are also, right, as we could say, like accumulating an unfolding of some kind, whether it be the merit of goodness that benefits others or that causes more pain and suffering. If you think about the cup of tea that you're sipping and everything that went into creating whatever's in this little tea bag, which are, for me, it's like cinnamon, and I have this like rooibos chai tea that I'm sipping. So a farmer, right, cultivated some aspects of that. Somebody else made that little tea bag that wraps all those magical fragrant herbs up. And you just keep pulling back, and it's like the sun, the rain, the trees, right? As I sip that, I am taking in all of those things: the farmer, the sun, the tree that became the paper. All of those things are interwoven into that cup of tea that I am sipping right now. All that brought it to my kettle to pour the water, all those things. So interdependence is that. And unless we are practicing on purpose and paying attention, we really do forget how connected it all is. And for those of us who are tenderhearted, who might have a lot of like sensitivity to the world around us, we can see often how choices are unfolding present moment circumstances, whether it be culturally or socially or on a personal level with our own families. But a lot of people are very disconnected from their hearts or disconnected from their impact. And many, if not most, are not doing it maliciously or to harm.
Right.
But there is some truth to, and I experienced it actually being a step parent. We imagine that there is, on some primal level, like a lack or only so much resource. And so we might, in different arenas of our lives, try to manage our resources in a way that that we forget, right? We forget that we're all connected. So
There's
what
that
I'm
kind of
doing,
scarcity.
yeah, the scarcity. And, this is what we could just go so many places with this, but it's like, this is what makes it so interesting and also so challenging at times, being a practitioner who is not a monastic, right? I did not renounce. I don't, I haven't given up all of my worldly possessions and all the conveniences of the world that I live in to practice, right? Right now in this season of life, I am kind of straddling two worlds, my personal practice as a student and teacher, and then these kind of everyday ordinary things that we have to do, like pay a mortgage and raise your children and run a business. And that can be really challenging to see how it all intersects, how it all connects.
I work with a lot of people that have, and people that listen to the podcast have gone through trauma for like your addiction. Do you think, this is something I wonder about, because I haven't had like, of course I have little addictions of things, but I haven't had that experience, but I lived with it as a kid. And two, do you think it's like the addiction that isolates us, or is the isolation, like the addiction is like the numbing or the symptom, you know what I mean? Like, and it's our way of trying to medicate basically.
Oh, of course.
Already feeling isolation.
Yeah. It's like, it's an adaptive way, whether it's, for better or worse. We're all addicted. Let's just say that. We are all addicted, and we are addicted to avoiding presence. All of us, and even myself as a heartfully dedicated practitioner, I am also caught up in checking out from this very present moment.
Yeah.
Just as it is. I'm caught in the anticipation of, or the reflection of, right? I'm thinking back to something that already happened, or I have this anxiety of something impending. So a traumatic experience occurs, our nervous systems, most likely, especially at tender young ages, don't know how to meet something that is traumatic. And so that's where my addiction was born from.
Yeah.
I still remember the first time I engaged in my addiction of choice was because of a sexual assault when I was very young. And that feeling of not knowing what to do with how I felt inside about myself, about what had happened, did instigate a need to not feel what I was feeling.
Yeah.
So for me, my active addictions, which they kind of, addiction switched in those years, was about taking the edge off of a feeling that I didn't know what to do with. I didn't know how to hold, and I didn't know how to attend it and befriend it. This is decades and decades before I was introduced to meditation or to self-compassion or to any other tools, or even just understanding physiology, let alone any kind of spiritual practices. Just understanding the nature of the physiology of trauma, or how our nervous systems are formed as young people in environments that might be confusing and chaotic, that our nervous systems are just trying to orient towards safety all the time. And if it doesn't feel safe, then the easiest thing to do is to seek something that helps us not feel those things, because that's a protective mechanism.
So many of my listeners, to be honest, are women that have dealt with sexual trauma. Like that's what a lot of my
I mean, if
listeners
we
are.
can speak freely of it and not, we don't need to feel shy about it. I mean, the more we speak about it in a way that is clear and just to diminish some of the shame or some of the sharpness or some of the, like, we don't talk about this or that.
Yeah. I wonder about the addiction part, those a little bit more, because having anxiety, or there's tools to going in the future, right? Like I see my free self and that kind of guides me a little bit, or I see my, there's some tools of imagination. but it can also go in the other way where it's like taking over your prana or taking over your current energy. And then there's also tools of like depression or sadness. Or I wonder, like, one of the things you said that made me wonder about my own practice is it's not the like anxiety or the dreaming or the, going into the future or the past, because sometimes I need to go to the past, right, to clear
Of
and cleanse,
course.
and sometimes I need to
Sure.
go in the future. But it's when I
Yeah.
try to check out, right? Like that's the addiction. For me, addiction's always been
Yes.
screen, and it's always been, you know, drama and stuff. Like that's how I handled my trauma and my addiction, is going into series or movies or things like that.
Yeah.
And that's me checking out. It's like, I don't want to be here.
It's sweet that you say that. It's like it's not the substance or the thing that we're kind of are using, right? Our drug of choice, if you want to call it that. Our drug of choice could be like a plethora of things, whether it's a screen or online shopping or you know sex or food. And I don't mean it in a like, I mean, we can use all kinds of things to change how we feel. And part of that is the magic of being human, is that we're always orienting, like I said, towards safety. And sometimes the maladaptive approach to that is to just find a way to not feel the intensity of the present moment because we don't know how to hold it.
Right.
And we are not taught, we're not trained how to meet discomfort. We have a extremely low tolerance for discomfort.
One of the things yoga has taught me too is, and I know you feel this too, is like one of the fears is like, oh, I have to hold it alone. And that's
Mm.
going back to that interdependence, is learning how to let the earth and, like you're saying, the sun and these cosmos hold this thing with me, has been such the healing journey of yoga, meditation. And I'm not as big of anymore a Buddhist practitioner as you are, but that my roots are definitely in that.
When we pull way back and we go, whoa, we're all connected. It's all connected. That can sometimes make our heads feel like it wants to explode because it's like, it's so big and it makes
Existential,
us,
yeah.
yeah, it can make us feel really small. And there's something really important about pulling way back like that to get perspective on some of the ways in which we might get caught up in drama.
Mm.
And the drama is another addiction. I mean, let's just say it, any kind of drama, ours, somebody else's. Yeah, give me the tea, the chisme, right? Let's hear the gossip. But the
Yeah.
drama is what perpetuates that feeling of separation, that kind of disconnection from our interconnection. And so it's like, how do we pull way back and see our true nature, if you want to call it our Buddha nature or whatever you might identify it as, but that place where I am not separate from everything around me. And yet I still need to go and fold the laundry and right and make dinner and braid my daughter's hair,
Yeah.
like these little moments. And then the big moments or the big pullback help us to remember that whatever is occurring right now is not solid.
Mm.
And so when things feel really caught up, when we feel so narrowed that we can't breathe, we can't feel the space all around us, we have to engage in these practices of pulling back and seeing, oh, great nature, right?
Mm.
And how we are a part of it. And we play, even though it might feel so small, it's still part of what makes everything so beautiful and precious. And
Mm.
then it helps me to come back to those moments that I'm caught up in and allow me to meet them with a bit more space. So I'm not making them so solid. And when I forget that I am a part of, right, when I forget that there is this interdependence of all things, I solidify, right? I'm making something solid. And whether it's a conversation I've had or something that's occurring in my personal life, or it's something that's happening on a more global scale, it is important that we practice dancing between pulling back, slowing down, observing, and then coming back from that place so that we're a little bit more grounded, because otherwise, when we lack that perspective of interdependence or connection to the larger whole of life, we're reactive. We get caught up in emotion that doesn't support us moving towards peace. As far as like you're navigating a shift yourself or some changes in your own life, and how are you holding yourself? Who are
Yeah,
you
I think
surrounding yourself with,
hearing
or how are you resourcing?
yeah, hearing you talk, it's like I don't think I am giving myself enough space. Because my business partner who was with me for 8 years almost has left the business. And that's, I think, the most thing that I'm grieving right now. And I think I've tried a little, but I don't think I fully have. And then I had to vacate because they were selling the property. So I had to
Yeah.
vacate the studio all by myself. And that was
Yeah, that's a
really
lot.
intense. Um, yeah, I think I'm grieving.
This is just like a very short side story. In 2020, my mother died and my father died.
Mm,
And as my father was dying, he was in the intensive care unit and he had been in an accident.
mm.
And I found out he wasn't my father.
Oh my gosh,
And
Erinn.
so there was this whole uncovering and discovering that, you know, I'm someone else in a lot of ways, right? Like who I am isn't who I thought I was. Talk about a trip, you know. So
Yeah.
my mother passed. She kept this secret for 40. I'm
Wow.
40. I'll be 48 this year, whatever the math is on that. But for 42 years, she kept a secret around my identity, right? And who my father was.
Yeah.
And I only came across it because I was asking my grandmother about our history and our ancestry. And I had said, you know, I did my DNA and I've got 50% indigenous American. And I'm like, who's Native American in our family, or who's, you know, like what's going on? And she was like, we are not, you know, my mother's side. And I was like, that doesn't math up.
Yeah.
Because look, and I showed her the whole thing. And she's like, well, we always thought you looked like your mother's first husband, Guillermo. But we never said anything because your mother never said anything. And it turns out that's where it all
Wow.
is. And so I'm going to be meeting my father for the first time, my biological father, for the first time next month.
Wow.
And I share this because of the grief part. I didn't let myself really grieve. It took years to really like whole body grieve. I would give myself these little tiny windows to feel,
Yeah.
but I had all this anxiety and fear that if I let myself like really feel it all, the kind of weight of just truth coming out, that it wouldn't stop. You know, I had this like, I look back and kind of a little bit of a funny fear that if I started to cry, if I allowed myself to really feel, there would just be no end in sight. I wouldn't be able
Yeah.
to like function. And so
Mm,
I kind of compartmentalized it. And even though I was acknowledging it and aware of it, and I was using some of it as fuel, as teaching inspiration, I wasn't allowing myself to just really strip down and like feel that really tender loss and the ache of like who I thought I was, or all the things I missed out on because I wasn't given the opportunity to be loved by this other person and this whole family and this whole culture. And it took until just this last summer. And so this last summer was the biggest grief that
mm.
I ever got to feel in like a physical way. And so I just encourage you, you can't force it. I mean, you just can't. But something happened this last summer that like, it basically just like ripped me open, and it allowed me to like fall apart in a way that I'd never been able to do by like telling myself it's okay to let go, or today you can. It was just like, so sometimes like really painful things that like really fuck you up, that are separate from the other griefs that are like in there waiting to be released, might be
Yeah.
that sort of floodgate if you just allow yourself, right, to really fall apart.
But I have gone through the fears a little bit too of like, and I know you had to, I was like, I can't let go of this because it will mean XYZ, you know.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it will mean I'm not who I'm saying I am as a yoga teacher or, like all those things.
All of that stuff. And that's why it's like you have to get naked to yourself, literally like stripping down, and all that like holding on to who you want to be perceived as. It's not that we have to bond over the traumatic things or have this false intimacy, because that's not what we're trying to do when we open ourselves to the truth of the day, but instead just to give yourself that gift, because it's going to ripen you like nothing else. I mean, truly, like the wisdom that comes from just stripping yourself down and being like, fuck, it's like this now. And I don't like it, and I don't want it, and it hurts, and I'm scared. It's potent shit.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I can't
Better than any drug, Holly. Any drug.
You had mentioned wanting to maybe talk about what's happening in the States a little bit. Maybe you don't, so that's okay if you don't, but how it's related in this kind of lack of perspective of how we are connected.
I will say that my heart struggles to expand and soften towards what I believe to be extremely unjust and violent, and the antithesis of our purpose as human beings. What's going on right now in the United States is it's very, well, it's pregnant with fear, right? There's so much fear and anxiety, and if you're not experiencing that, then we're probably not paying attention and putting on that kind of critical thinking of what's going on here. This is unfolding in a way, and so straddling these roles of being an American or being an everyday person with a spiritual path means that there has to be an inclusion of the universal prayer for all beings to be relieved of suffering, to extend compassion out infinitely. And that feels scary. It feels scary to extend out compassion towards people who are harming others. And so even though I don't think I'm there yet, right? I'm not, my heart isn't big enough, if I, can just say it, like my heart is still rigid towards some people. And so what I have found to be extremely helpful is to practice Tonglen, to practice first self-compassion for my own anxieties, worries, and fears around my life as a woman. I'm also half Mexican. My father is Mexican. He grew up in Mexico and only lived briefly in the States. And so there's a layer to it in regards to my identity, my heritage. And that's a whole nother story around my father. And then as a woman who has experienced sexual assault, as someone who is raising daughters. So there's so many layers to the reality that we're walking into, but the Buddhist practices would encourage us to not only practice loving kindness, compassion, but to then engage in the world with clarity and use the resources that we do have. And so it's a dance, and it's imperfect, and I can't say what other people's roles need to be, but all of us do have a voice, and we do have our own resource capacity. And when we can, we need to lean in and use our voices and step in and stand up for those who cannot right now.
Did you ever read Sharon Salzberg? She was like my first Buddhist teacher, I feel like, through her writings.
I love that. Yeah. I haven't read her work in a while, but
one of the things that always stuck with me and always will stick with me is she tells this story in Love and Kindness, that book, where she's in a different country, can't exactly remember where, but she's in an Asian country, and she's in a more like a trolley, and there's a man that's trying to like grab her purse, because the trolley's not going very fast. And she said she talks about this, like she opened her heart and with all her loving kindness hit him with her umbrella.
That's it. I think that sums it right up. It's open your heart, but don't take no shit, right? That image is so perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Holly. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's like that. Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah.
It's that boundary. It's like, yes, I love you, but you got to step
it's
back.
it's like we want all beings to be relieved of suffering, to be liberated. And yet we don't have to invite them to dinner, kind of thing. It's extend out, do your part, even if it's uncomfortable. And one thing that I found to be very helpful as a meditation practitioner is when I do notice that wall of resistance arising in me towards someone, rather than forcing myself to wish them peace or wish them relief from suffering, is to go back to that part of myself that feels blocked or stuck or rigid, and work the prayer and work the practice and meet that part of myself with the same care. So it's go back rather than forcing, and turn towards that part that is resistant. May that part of me be free of suffering, and to pour compassion on that part that wants to hold on for dear life or push away what's arising, or to pretend. And that tends to really soften. And so there's a little more breathing room to lean in a little further towards those people that we'll never have to invite to dinner, but we hope can be relieved of their suffering.
Well, I have these quick questions, and just whatever comes to your mind.
Sure. Okay, let's do it.
It's like a word, 2 words, maybe, what makes your spirit expand?
Seeing my children joyfully be themselves. Yeah. Instantly.
What makes your spirit contract?
Well, we might just use the same thing. When I witness someone I love believe something about themselves that isn't real or true, right? That stops them from shining, from expressing.
What do you collect that would say the most about you?
I don't have much of a collection of things. I mean, I have a lot of meditation books.
Okay, fair. That's good.
Maybe we'll go with that.
What emotion has been your biggest teacher?
Grief. Grief.
What do you wish you could learn?
Well, we'll just keep it really, really pragmatic. I wish to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there it is.
And what do you wish you could unlearn?
Oh my goodness. All right. What do I wish I could unlearn? The protective parts of me. Protective parts of me that show up when they don't need to be protected anymore. Yeah.
If you met your soul before you were born and it whispered to you, what would it say? What did it say?
Well, what I'm imagining right now is the image that's coming to mind is a beautiful spiral staircase up, and a butterfly. So we'll just leave it at that image.
Yeah, love it. I love image. And then if you were to meet your future self 10 years from now, what will she thank you for?
She will thank me for slowing down and for really giving my heart space to truly grieve some of the tender, deeper losses of my life. Yeah, because that is wisdom right there. So yeah, she'll thank me for that.
I can't thank you enough for meeting with me for this hour and just like sharing your soul and your beautiful spirit. I'm so, so grateful to you.
Thank you, Holly. I had some tears come through at the end. Thank you for those really sweet questions. I appreciate you.
I do too. And I'm so happy to see Sukha doing so well. You took over Eastside too, didn't you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a whole nother adventure. But yes, we did. And then the pandemic, and then we closed down, and then we've since reopened on the east side in a different location. And then we have our central Tarrytown location, and then our south.
I hope to get to Austin to experience it.
Please come. Please. Whenever you're able to make it happen, I'd love to have you in. Yeah.